Continuing on the UV map here, I'm going to split up the faces to make it easier to texture them without overlapping anything. So I've selected one of the faces there by using right-click and then Control L. And then I'm using the transform tool over on the left there in the UV editor to translate or move the faces. These will be lined up with the grid once I have them separated. To separate what's on the bottom there, I'll have to scale everything down, and I'll scale everything simultaneously, but first I have to find out what is what. So what is right, what is left, when we're talking about the sides of the box. So the way to solve that problem is I go into the 3D view again, select each face, and then look at where it shows up in the UV editor. So you can see I selected face select mode, and then I jumped over to the UV editor. And that appears to be the left side when using the view from the front. All your view controls, of course, they are in that view menu. But here I'm moving the left side over to the left. Now I'm going to move the front and back sides into position where they're not overlapping the left and right sides. But as you can see, I still have to scale everything down if I want to avoid overlap and have some gaps in between these faces. So if I select all, I can scale them down just by clicking S. And I don't have to scale them down by very much to separate them because they already fit, but I wanted to have gaps just because texturing is much easier when you have gaps. So now I'm trying to line up with the grid. In the end, they're not going to be lined up perfectly, even after I adjust everything. For whatever reason, Blender doesn't unwrap as precisely as you would expect it to. And when I scan images, I don't get 100% perfection either. Now, of course, again, right-click to select the vertex, Control L to select the linked vertices, and then I use the transform tool to move. Using that transform button is a little bit unusual in that you just click the button and then move your mouse. You don't then click the subject again. That's an important thing to know if you're having trouble with that. It doesn't really work the same way as other move tools, both in Blender and on other programs. Now the next step is to select all, go to UVs, export UV layout, and then save the file in PNG format so that it can then be imported into GIMP to start the texturing. I'm also saving the Blender file here. You always have to save. Probably should have saved this a lot sooner. So here I am in GIMP. I'm going to open that UV layout. And I'm not going to make it a PNG in the end, but first of all I have to put it in the more or less the format that I like. So I select it all. I go to the levels there under colors, and I kill the alpha by making the alpha as bright as possible, which really means making it as dark and as untransparent as possible. Then the black background I change to white using the paint bucket tool. If you've seen my other videos, you know I do this for all my textures. Then I add a layer so that I can label it, so that I know what's what. This isn't really necessary on a model that's this simple, but I'm at least demonstrating how it's done. So I put a label here. I know it's the left side of the box, so I put in left. I up the size to 24 points because it's just easier to read that way. And none of these will be visible on the model, because notice they're outside the UV map. So then the right side, again, I'm making it 24 points. The move tool to get it outside the UV map there, which is important. Then I go back to Blender, and I double check where the other sides of the box are represented on the UV map. So the front is there. I'm going to start with 24 points here since I know that's what I want. So front, move it into place. Obviously this would be the back. When I get the move tool to work here, I'll move that into place. There we go. Now the top and the bottom, I've got to find those, which one is which. So the top is the one on the right in the UV map, and so I'll mark that. And then obviously the other one would be the bottom. I'll demonstrate it here, even though it's obvious. There it is. So label that. Bottom. Move that label into place. Now I have to merge all these text layers because text layers in GIMP are never treated as graphics layers, so they always form a new layer whenever you add them. By that I mean each string of text, actually. And so next we will do the proper texturing in the next video.